I'm a 15-year-old comic book lover. Should I focus on my Mac skills, my drawing skills, or my storytelling skills?
Well, it's always storytelling, always drawing, and if you use a Mac, obviously your technical skills don't have to be that great, because the Mac is a wonderful computer, which means that you can use it very intuitively, and I have used the Mac for the past 20 years almost, so I would recommend them at every opportunity. If you can write your name, you can draw. Drawing is actually seeing. That's what it is. By drawing you learn to see. And I suppose that's the challenge with drawing, is to refine how you see and to refine how you express your ideas. The thing about comics is that the drawings have to be relatively simple. You only look at a comic book drawing for seconds, so you have to get the information over very quickly. You can't load them up with too much detail. If you do, you distort the storytelling because it traps the eye too much. So it's really a very sophisticated, often simple, but a very sophisticated way of drawing. One of the things I'm really pleased about with the movie is that it's faithful to the graphic novel, it doesn't misrepresent it, and also that I think it's sufficiently well made that it will direct people towards the graphic novel, so hopefully the outcome will be that people have had a good movie experience and will also have a good graphic novel experience as well. Well, I don't tend to get riled up, I just pity their ignorance, I think, as much as anything. I mean, I don't like things like, I've got a real bee in my bonnet about people like Roy Lichtenstein, who kind of do these terribly, I think, sloppy tracings of comic books and pass them off as some kind of kitschy pop art thing. I think comic book art at its best is incredibly sophisticated. As I say, it's simple, but actually it's the naive eye that's captured by detail. I mean, when I first started reading comics, I loved really complicated detail drawing, and I can do that. And Watchmen is sort of famed for its very dense kind of detailed pictures, but if you look at those pictures, the composition of them is actually very accessible. The line work is very simplified, which isn't to say that it's crude. I mean, it's made me think of something, I forget who the writer was, but he wrote somebody a letter and said, "I'm sorry that I've written you such a long letter. I would have written a shorter one, but I didn't have the time." Well, you know, I've been reading comics since I was maybe 4, 5, 6 years old. I've got vivid memories of being bought my first Superman comic. And I'd always liked to draw when I was a kid. And suddenly it was, hey, not only can you draw a picture, but you can tell a story. You can't just show somebody a picture, but you can give them something that they can sit down and have an experience. And that's what fascinates me about comics. That's really all I've wanted to do, is not draw for drawing's sake, but draw to tell people stories. It's like seeing that again, but seeing it for real. You're not dreaming it, this is really happening. And of course, to see actual things that you've drawn become real in the real world, to stand next to the actors, to smell the comedian's cigar smoke, to recoil slightly from Rorschach is very bizarre. To be inside the owl ship, you know, something that was in my head that I then drew, that has now become three-dimensionally real, and now I'm inside it, is a very peculiar experience. So once the Watchmen was successful, people knew that they could then let me write things, and at least they could get that kind of halo effect of Watchmen. And I think I acquitted myself quite well as a writer, and so I've gone on to write other things. Certainly I've had experiences that if Watchmen hadn't been so successful, I never would have had. I'm actually, at the moment, I'm quite excited, because one of the other things that I worked on for some time was with a writer called Frank Miller, who I'm sure your viewers will know, a thing called Martha Washington. And over the years, that's amounted to quite a big body of work.
It's a hard book, 600-page Martha Washington compendium coming out this
year.
That's
right, the life and times of Martha Washington in the 21st century. A lot of non-comic book people actually at some point in their lives probably were comic book people. My experience is that a lot of people, normal people, read comics when they were 7, 8, 9, 10 and then stopped. I did read an interesting quote the other day. You know the old thing of when I was a child I enjoyed childish things, now I'm a man, I've put childish things away. Well, now I am a man, I've put childish things away, including the fear of being thought childish. And I think there are a lot of people who gave up comics because they were thought to be childish, who have now come across things like Watchmen and thought, hey, this is the thing I used to like, but it somehow isn't childish. A guy was painting the outside of my house, and through the window he could see that I was doing comics. And he said, oh, you do comics? He said, I used to love comics when I was a kid. Don't read them now, of course. I said, oh, well, here, this is one I've just done. Here's the whole story in this so-called graphic novel. Please have one. And the next morning, this guy was usually very punctual. He'd be there at work by about 8 o'clock in the morning. 10 o'clock, he hadn't turned up. When he finally did turn up, I said, what happened? He said, it's all your fault, you bastard. He said, that book you gave me, I thought I'd have a little look at it when I got into bed last night. I was still reading it at 4 o'clock in the morning. I woke the wife up. I'm in real trouble. I'm late for work, you know. But that was an amazing breakthrough to me. It had the effect of making the comic book industry very dark and grim and gritty. That wasn't our idea. What we wanted to do was to look at superheroes and the conventions of the superhero world in an objective way. If it was real, what would it really be like? And inevitably that takes you down some often dark alleyways. And certainly say with like Rorschach, you have to go down a very dark alley. But then that's contrasted with Night Owl, who is the millionaire playboy who's got wonderful gadgets, and it's the joy and the glamour of superhero. There's a thing coming out from DC very shortly called Wednesday Comics, which is a return to the old Sunday newspaper funnies format, you know, big oversized comic book. And I've written a Commandy series for that, the Jack Kirby character, who's a wonderful, fabulous character with talking animals and everything in it, being drawn by an artist called Ryan Sook and looking really, really good. I'm probably going to be writing some animation. There's DC have plans to expand the Green Lantern franchise. A movie and so on has been talked about. I'm going to be writing an animated sequence for that, which again is the kind of lighter side of superheroics as well. So I'm kind of moving in several directions. I'm also going to be doing some computer games work with a friend of mine who I did some work with it in the past. I'm very interested in the way that storytelling is kind of spreading and at the same time kind of converging, you know, that there's visual storytelling in comics, in games, on handheld devices, on computer screens. You know, it seems a really interesting time to be a visual storyteller, and so I just hope to continue expanding my range.
The world will look up and shout, "Save us." And I'll whisper, "No."